This is episode 20 of the Sports Business Classroom Audio Experience.
Welcome to the Sports Business Classroom Audio Experience. I'm your host, Sergio Millis, and each week I'll bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover how to break in and succeed in sports and life. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and let the experience begin. This episode is brought to you by Sports Business Classroom 2020. An immersive sports business training and educational experience unlike any other, taking place July 12th through the 18th in Las Vegas during Summer League. Registration for the program opened last week, and ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to miss this. It truly is a one-of-a-kind learning opportunity for anyone interested in the business of basketball and jobs in sports in general. I mean, if you dream of one day landing a job in sports, are passionate about learning, or simply want to show the right people that you have what it takes to get a job in sports, this program is for you. Sports Business Classroom combines the best of all worlds into a single package. It's great academics, it's hands-on experience, it's immersion in the Las Vegas Summer League, and it's interaction with some of the best minds working in and around the NBA. You can check out all the details for the 2020 program at sportsbusinessclassroom.com, and if you're at all interested, make sure to apply as soon as possible, as this program will fill up. Again, the URL is www.sportsbusinessclassroom.com. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, Sergio Millis, and today's episode of the Sports Business Classroom Audio Experience is a little different than what you'd normally expect from the show. Today's episode is the audio from a recent Sports Business Classroom web show hosted by NBATV's Beau Estes that featured former Atlanta Hawks GM Wes Wilcox, NBA salary cap expert Jeff Siegel, and HallPass Media President Albert Hall. Our guests talked about how the current shutdown affects different stakeholders around the game of basketball, as well as what impact it may have on the salary cap and subsequently teams' roster moves. The show was a fantastic meeting of the minds on the state of the basketball business today and a discussion of where things might go. Without further ado, I give you the Sports Business Classroom Basketball Business Roundtable hosted by Mr. Beau Estes.
Hi, hello, and welcome everybody to our very first SBC web show. My name is Beau Estes. You see our guests right there, but before we get to them, we all want to send a shout out to really thank our first responders because their hard work, their bravery allows us to do what we're doing here, and it's going to be our best pathway back to some sort of normalcy, which is what we're all hoping for. But with that in mind, we're here to do an SBC web show, and what's the idea behind that? Well, we wanted to get some industry leaders together to sort of talk a little sports, a little business, and a little hoops. And the common thread with all of our guests here is that they have some connection to SBC, the immersive broadcast, salary cap, analytics, scouting program that wraps around the Las Vegas Summer League. And with that in mind, my name's Beau Estes. I've mentioned that. I work with NBATV. I work with NBA.com. And the first guy I want to mention, Wes Wilcox. Wes, you were instrumental in that salary cap and we're really scouting an analytics program with Dave DeFore last year. If you could tell us, you're a former general manager of the Atlanta Hawks, and then you go through this experience. What was that like for you?
Oh, well, Beau, first of all, it's great to be with you and everybody else, Albert and Jeff. This is a great thing that, Albert has really started to, create content to share in this time. So, thank you for having me. But SBC it's really a great event because number one, it gives you a chance to give back and to kind of share your experiences with the next generation that, someday wants to be where guys like us have been and where we will be in the future. So it's a great opportunity to share and learn, but it's also a great opportunity to get to know some of the up and coming young talent in the world of sports. And, everybody's going to get to hear from Jeff Siegel, who's with us today, but he's a great example of that. Someone that I've built a relationship with, I've learned from, and he's done just a fantastic job in building this website that many across the industry now use as a tool to help them understand what's going on in the NBA from a financial and salary cap perspective. So it's a great event to be a part of, to give back, to learn from, run by just terrific people.
Well, Wes, you stole my segue there. Jeff, you are one of the emerging guys in this business. I know that you run the Early Bird Rights website. Tell us a little bit. You're the only person that's gone through this program as a student. Tell us what that experience was like and what future students could expect.
Yeah, I went through the program in 2017. It was just a fantastic way for me to, learn the ins and outs of the salary cap. I was part of the salary cap program when I was there. And, I was able to, pick up so many little things that helped me build my website into, sort of what it is today, where, you can find, the most up-to-date and accurate salary cap information. If I don't know every in and out of the salary cap, then that's, that whole website isn't even possible. So that was one of the biggest things that I took away from SBC, and then secondarily is just, you get to network with all sorts of high-end NBA executives, former NBA executives, people who, have been in our shoes and are willing to, help you get to where you want to go. And so I think, between those two things, that's, really what you can expect at SBC. You're going to learn a ton. You're going to meet people who are, high up in the basketball world, and you're going to be able to sort of show what you can do and learn so that you can do that even better the next year.
And I think Jeff hit on something important there. I feel like all of our role here is to help young people get to where they want to go in this business. And with that, Albert, we bring in you. You're the president of HallPass Media. You're the guy who brought us all together. I know the business of basketball has changed tremendously in the last couple of months, but that doesn't mean your squad at HallPass has slowed down. If anything, you picked up the pace. What are you guys working on right now?
Hey, Bo, thanks for having us all here today. And it's been an interesting time. Obviously, let me take a step back before I jump into that question. But just to touch on SBC a little bit, I mean, SBC, as we started this, my partner Warren Legary and I, we did Summer League 16 years ago and founded that. And that's developed in all different areas. But one of the things and the common theme was, not only are we developing talent for the league on the floor, we wanted to develop the talent off the floor. And I think Wes touched on it a little bit. Understanding all these young, up-and-coming, bright minds, unbelievable energy, people that just needed an opportunity. And Summer League provides an unbelievable platform for that. So SBC has morphed into this program that really developed an unbelievable network throughout the league, throughout the industry. And each year we try to develop, reconfigure the curriculum, whatever it may be. Larry Kuhn, who's our general manager of SBC, does a great job. But each year we try to extract some things out of there. And I think now what you're seeing with the change in sports business, the change in what we're doing here today on the web show, I mean, this is just one example of how SBC can pivot off of the normal, technology or the normal curriculum into something new. And with my team at HallPass and VSL properties, which we're always looking at, hey, how do we stay relevant? And I mean, that's been the biggest challenge for us. We're not a big parent company. We don't have a parent company. We're a small shop. We grow and change and navigate the landscape of the business of basketball in a variety of ways. So we've been doing everything we can to stay relevant. The web shows, producing a number of content options, staying connected with our network, engaging our business contacts, engaging our talent contacts of the young people that are in our program. And I think this is just another example of it today.
I tell you what, from my perspective, SBC is the program that I wished was there when I came out of college 25 years ago. Because when I came out, I walked into a job with a 4-year degree, sure, but not the experience and not the understanding necessary to swim right in and go full speed. And I think from my perspective, SBC, more than I ever even imagined the first time I joined the program, really gives the students that understanding and that background to get going right away. And to me, that was the best part of it. I want to jump into another topic now, the economic impact of this NBA hiatus. And Albert, let's go right back to you. You're a business owner. Your ship is tied to hoops in a large way. You've got lots of competing interests. You want to stay engaged. You've got concerns about everything. How did you navigate that, and how does it change from day one when this thing sort of breaks out to now, how things are going?
It's been tough. There's no doubt. I mean, just like anyone else in a business or an industry that's completely stopped. I mean, we've had to really take a look at all areas of our business, cover the costs that we have. I mean, revenues have really kind of just come to a pause, really. I'm not going to say a halt, but a pause, because there's just so much uncertainty. I mean, these are new times for all of us. Obviously, we're waiting on different calendars, and the calendars meaning when are broadcasts going to happen, when are events going to happen, all of those things. And we've really tried to navigate those waters and be ahead of it. The web show, as I said, is one. I mean, we've come up with a variety of situations and circumstances on how to run a new live event. So live events is a big part of our business. So working with our medical professionals, our infectious control team, our event and venue operators, not only from an NBA standpoint, but we also are highly involved in the TBT now, which is the basketball tournament, which was due to start up right after NBA Summer League. We have a number of things that we operate with NBA Coaches Association. So everybody is in a holding pattern, but really the challenge is you try to control what you can. And unfortunately right now, that's not a lot for all of us. But you also look, if there is a new opportunity that arises, or a new industry, or a new niche in this business, you got to be ready to strike. I joked around the other day with our guys. I said, look, if we need to build boats, we're going to build boats, right? We just need to be able to do that and pivot. Pivot is a key word for all of us, and we do that pretty well at HallPass with a nimble team. But it's been a challenge. There's no doubt, not knowing what it is. And part of doing these shows themselves is the mental capacity. I mean, that's going to be a big challenge for all of us throughout this time, is how do we stay mentally sharp? How do we maintain our obligations at home and our families and all of that without losing that edge in business? And in basketball, as you said, it's hyper competitive. There's only a handful of people that do what we do with the NBA and these relationships and with SBC. So, for us, it's staying sharp and figuring out what's next. But in the meantime, motivating, keeping everybody fresh and ready to go when we're called.
Wes, I think about something Albert said about staying sharp and everything like that. You've been involved. You've been a general manager of a team. How would you be communicating with people during this circumstance? And tell me about the timeline also for the NBA, why that calendar is so important for them as they try to get back and play out this season.
Yeah, well, talking to people around the NBA and friends across the league right now, front offices, coaches, medical teams are staying, in day-to-day contact with their players. A lot of them are doing, Zoom workouts, like conditioning workouts. Many are just the normal course of communication, texting, phone calls. Everybody in this time is going to stay connected to their players and their staff, because, staffs are a part too. And the front offices are working on the NBA draft, and they're holding Zoom calls or, Microsoft team calls or, opportunities like this where they're working like they would be in the office, but just doing it through technology. Because one of the challenges in this current time is the NBA draft is still on the calendar and at the end of June, and teams have to assume that that's going to happen until they know otherwise. I think everyone is kind of believes that will be pushed back, but we don't know that, because that's going to come after a decision on, how they're going to handle the season. So everybody is doing their best using technology to stay connected at this time. And then your second question about starting the season and restarting the season, that's going to be driven, one, by, of course, the medical community. Two, we're going to need public sentiment, to move in favor of something like this. And third, though, is there's going to be a significant focus on player health. And this period of time, this delay, this pause, as Albert said, every player has a different physical, training setup. Many players are living in apartments, and those apartment complexes, I've understood, in some cases have their fitness centers shut down. So teams have sent, training equipment to their players' houses or apartments to try to help give them something that they can do to stay in condition. And so I would imagine that we're going to have a really nice run up before we actually start playing games again, assuming we do. We all hope we do. But you're going to have a good 20, 25, 30-day window, I would think, at minimum, to know that you're going to have an opportunity to recondition before we restart the season.
Hey, what do you think? That's
on that too for a second, Beau. Like everything that Wes mentioned from a player health, all of those, everything that goes into restarting. Take it another step now from a live event operator. All of the venues, all of the arenas, everything that goes into that. I mean, these businesses are designed to run at 100% capacity. Our Vegas hotels, for example. I mean, and shutting that down and slowly coming back, whether it be 25, 40%, whatever it may be, it's really a strained challenge now to come up with a business model where you can actually make money and make a living, right? I mean, because they're not designed to do that. I mean, these guys, generally their margins are, once you're 80% capacity is where your margin's at, right? Above that. So now we're talking about, look, you have to design an entire plan, not only for live games and to keep everyone healthy, but testing, right? The basketball operations side of it, the venue management, security, sterilization, all of these different things. These are scenarios that we've been running in our head over and over and over again, trying to come up with a solution. And it's challenging, but as Wes touched on, that calendar, once that's put in place, then that will help us kind of develop a game plan off of that. And it's funny because this ecosystem of basketball, we all know, without one kind of, with one touch point touching the other, there's a disconnect. So we need to connect that, not only just from basketball, but just the global sports business.
Well, what I'm curious about is so a timeline, we get word that, okay, we're good to go whenever. A team's going to need what, Wes? A month to get training and to be ready to play a game? And does that correspond with, Albert, your timeline for a live event? Is that right, Wes? Roughly a month to get going, or you think it's more or less than that?
My gut is we'll get some sort of heads up that we'll start in, a training camp in 2 weeks or so or something. And then there'll be a 25-day or 20-day or 23-day, so in total, my guess is you're going to have, players in the facilities for a couple of weeks to get conditioned. And then you're going to have some sort of training camp and, some total of 30 to 40 days. I will say, though, there's one big difference that is really challenging in this environment is, let's assume we're going to have a very compressed regular season window, couple games, right? Right now, the 8th seed and the 9th seed in both conferences, I mean, the closest I think is like 3.5 games or 3 games. Sure. And so you have 14 teams out there essentially that kind of know they're not in the playoffs, right? And
what's their motivation?
That's the greatest challenge. There's 16 teams that believe that they're in. And so every one of those players and those staffs, they know that they're dialed in. And so I think it's easier to condition and train and prepare in that setting. Whereas the biggest concern is the 14 teams, because that mental sharpness, when and you saw Steve Kerr said this just the other day, that they're kind of acting like they kind of know their season's over. That's where the risk is, I think, from a ramping up perspective, because those 14 teams, those players kind of know, that they're not really going to advance.
And so that goes back to what Albert talks about. If you can't just assume that we'll blow those games off, because what is it, 21% of the season? That's a lot of revenue that's dangling out there, I suppose. Albert, the timeline that Wes talked about, you as a live event operator, can you work in like the 45-day window to get things up and running on that side as well? Does that correspond?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, obviously there's some flexibility with our partners, whether it be hotels, logistics, arenas, all of those good things. But yeah, I mean, when they say we got to jump, we're going to say how high, and we'll be there. Again, I use those words, pivot and nimble, very key words with our business right now and everything that we do. But look, I think May 1st, and I knew we'd get into this conversation a little bit. It's almost inevitable to kind of foreshadow and project here, but I think May 1st we'll know a little bit more from a timeline perspective out of the league office. But look, the idea is everybody's in uncharted territory, both, and we'll get into the free agency, the draft, because as a guy, I'm not with a team. Our business is the second season, right? There's two seasons. There's the team, the regular season, and the playoffs when you're with the team in the league. Then there's the second season, which that's how Wes and I have become such good friends over the years, as we see each other all over the world in different events, and we're in the gym 10 hours a day, watching prospects, putting on events at camps, you name it. That's a real important part of the league, right? So you now have to adjust, and those aren't like set calendars. Those are generally remote locations that need to be adjusted. So, I mean, again, there's so many different, dominoes that need to fall into place. And once we have that kind of general framework of, the plan, then everybody will start to, cover their respective areas and develop a game plan for those.
And Jeff, all of this leads up to there's a lot of lost revenue that's going to sit out there. That's going to affect the salary cap. That's going to affect free agency. You tell us how, because there's a lot of complications from this revenue situation.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we don't even really know how this is going to affect the 2020-2021 salary cap and how that's going to affect their revenue projections. As Albert was hitting on, if everybody is sort of needs to operate at 80% capacity, well, what if it's 0% capacity? Like, what if we have no fans until January 2021? And the league has to sort of make their revenue adjustments, and those revenue adjustments can hit the salary cap. They don't necessarily have to. It's all sort of up in the air between the NBA and the Players Association. They're going to have to come together and basically agree on a projection for revenue for next year, and then agree on a salary cap that, those two things don't necessarily have to be tied together. Usually they are, because, under usual circumstances, revenue goes up, salary cap goes up, everybody's happy. In this situation, they can decide to, have the salary cap drop, which would have, massive impacts on team building, on team cap space this summer, on teams, trying to stay, borderline on the tax line. That's another big concern for a lot of teams. I heard from an executive yesterday on a team that has, that is right on the luxury tax line, and he's really concerned about, how their team is going to be able to handle this if the luxury tax line drops from, a projected 139 million down to, say, 133, 130 million. That's going to be a massive financial impact on a team that is already, impacted in a big way by this. And so, you see how teams can, be impacted by this, massive, economic crisis, just in terms of how they build their rosters and what, which free agents they're going to be willing to pay to bring back, when it's going to cost them a lot more than they had planned, going into this past season, going into the season before that. So, at this point, so much is up in the air. You would think that both sides, the players and the owners, would like to, both show a semblance of strength with, showing a $115 million salary cap. I think that would be beneficial to both sides, and then they can figure out the finances a little bit similar to how they're doing it now, where they just take more cash out of each paycheck. They're doing that now, rather than 10% going to escrow. They're now doing 12.5% for the rest of this season. So I think that is another, path in terms of, making the revenue even on both sides, but not necessarily, completely changing the team building process.
Is there an avenue for sort of an exception in the collective bargaining agreement, or even could they make a one-time exception that sort of delivers teams from that luxury tax, or is the agreement the agreement?
The agreement is not. Nothing is set in stone. They can do literally whatever they want. They can totally rip up the CBA and write a completely new one. They can write rules that just apply to this coming year. They can do rules that apply to the next 3 years if they want to sort of smooth that decline in. Obviously, smoothing is a little bit of a touchy subject after 2016, but
Sure.
This is sort of the opposite of that. Maybe the players and the owners would be more interested in sort of a downward smoothing instead of an upward smoothing. So I think there's nothing that's set in stone. Everything is negotiable. Everything is on the table. That's the most important thing, I think, for people to realize, is that we don't know anything about what could happen or what might happen. Everything is negotiable. They can put all of this stuff on the table. They can lower the salary cap and keep the luxury tax threshold where it was supposed to be. That's totally fine too. It's just up to the agreement between the league and the players.
Wes, from a team perspective, say you got a guy like Jeff on staff, what are you wanting to know from him? Is it several different projections of what things could look like? And what are your concerns if you're running a team?
Yeah, well, I mean, Jeff hit it on the head. First, from a global perspective, the only thing I would add to that is, just as a point of clarity, that would need to be negotiated between the owners and amongst themselves first. The governors would have to agree for the internal league mechanics regarding salary cap and luxury tax levels internally, and then the league would have to negotiate that with the Players Association as well. So it gets a little bit complicated. But it can all be done. Absolutely, Jeff is 100% right. Nothing is set in stone. One of the more interesting things here, though, is let's just say that the salary cap and the luxury tax were to come down, which it may not, but if revenues come down because we lose games, in theory, everyone kind of assumes that, there will be some kind of downward adjustment. That's why the league office is withholding more money from the players' paychecks to make sure that they're able to level set appropriately and that the players get what they are, contracted to receive, just above 50% of all basketball related income. But it's a double hit, though, because not only if we brought the luxury tax down for next year, everyone is using this number in the future to build their teams, right? And so everyone has this number of 139 or roughly $140 million that, look, we're going to stay under that number. We're going to go over by this amount. But if that gets adjusted downward, it's really, it hits you twice, because one, there's the general revenue impact that every team is facing. And then you're going to have a more punitive potential tax impact if they don't advise the tax downward. So it's really for those teams that would move from near the tax line into the tax line, they're really getting hit twice. And so this is one of the more interesting things to follow, to see how the league kind of approaches this, because the spirit of the rule is what often governs the league office. And the spirit of the salary tax, of the luxury tax, is to say, listen, everyone has a barometer that if you pay to this number and you go above, you do so knowingly that you're going to pay a penalty to do that because you believe that's a competitive advantage for your organization. And so if I had to bet, the league would make some sort of adjustment because of the spirit of the rule, and with the unusual circumstances, they're not going to want to hit the teams twice. But on the other hand, there may be some governors and some teams that want this to be more punitive, because it makes it more difficult in a competitive landscape. So that's why this one is going to be really interesting to see. Amongst a lot of things, this is going to be one very interesting element to see play out.
Well, Wes talked about the spirit. Jeff, in your conversations, is there a spirit of cooperation? Do people want to sort of make this work going forward?
Yeah, that's what I've heard from executives and from players and from player agents as well. Everybody's sort of trying to pull together. You can see that with the NBA and the NBPA coming together to agree on this 12.5% or 25% for the rest of the season, but 12.5% overall sort of revenue give back or salary give back from the player side. I think a lot of people on both sides really want this thing to work. They want to come to an amicable agreement for all parties. Everybody knows that this is not what anybody planned for. Everybody understands that, perhaps the competitiveness of, the competition between teams perhaps comes to it goes lower on the sort of priority list than just sort of the overall health of the league. That's the sense that I've been getting when it comes down to actually making these decisions. Perhaps we the smaller market owners who aren't anywhere near the tax are going to be like, hey, you're out of luck. That's your problem, not ours. So, we'll see where that comes from. But at this point, everybody has been, particularly amicable in terms of, their talks with each other.
An adjustment. I would say this too, Bo, just from an adjustment standpoint. I mean, every contract right now that we have or that we're a part of, everyone has been willing to adjust, right? That's been the mindset of basically the economy globally. I know I've read and know a few things and had a couple conversations that the 70 game minimum was a kind of a sticking point for television broadcast rights, right? They wanted to fulfill that. I think that may be something they're looking at right now. Like, look, there's no way to do that and pull off a playoff and, throughout this timeline and window. So that could be an adjustment there. I mean, ESPN and some of the rights holders like Warner or ESPN, I mean, their fear would likely be that all of these rights holders or rights leagues that they have rights to, they all fall and become live at the same time, right? So they're all stacked on top of each other. That's not a great scenario in order to make money, right, and generate revenue. They want these things spread out over time. You have different campaigns against each league, against each playoff, whatever it may be. So that's a challenge and something that they're adjusting right now as well, because there's only so many broadcast windows. They want to air, whether it be the Masters, MLB, MLS, NBA, NFL, all these things. And, I've had this conversation with both you, all three of you guys, I think off air, but to me, the big indicator is going to be for live events is college football. If you look at that, I mean, across the landscape of sports, you're talking, 150 to 200 venues filled on a Saturday, right? And all of the revenue, and then the non-conference games for some of these schools, that's their entire athletic budget is based on that. So I think that will be a really big indicator, along with the NBA. Obviously, the NBA everybody's waiting to see what happens, but you start putting all of these things in place, there's no doubt that it's going to be a challenge, but I think there needs to be flexibility, and that is the common theme across the sports business right now is every contract, everything. We've never been in this situation. We all need to be flexible and then make the best of 2020 and then project and strategically design 2021.
Well, the last topic I wanted to touch on is, it's Sports Business Classroom teaches students. We're here for the students. So any advice for students trying to best position themselves for a job when things get going back closer to normal? Jeff, I wanted to start with you, since you're closer to the start of your career in basketball than us graybeards, perhaps. Tell us what's been your approach. What have you done to take advantage of this time?
I mean, if you have the bandwidth to work on other projects that are outside of your sort of normal day-to-day, job, then this is the time to really hone your skills in a new area, or really sort of, hone in on the skills that you need to succeed at the next level, whatever that next level is, whether you want to work for ESPN and be, a broadcaster, whether you want to work for a team and be, a front office executive, whether you want to be a coach, a scout, an advanced scout, whatever you want to do, this is the time to, push yourself to learn a new skill, to, hone in on the skills that you had, previously, skills that, perhaps had waned in the past because you've got, your day job and you're working with your family and all this stuff. Now, if you have the bandwidth to do it, if you're, if you have a job that, perhaps you're not going to every day, you've got all of this extra commute time that you no longer, have to spend in your car going from place to place. This is the time to sort of use that extra time and really push yourself to, to add a new skill, or to, really hone the skills that you already have.
Wes, piggybacking on what Jeff said, I just keep thinking about people who are coming out of college. They've done everything right and they've really prepared themselves, and boom, this hits and they feel, man, my career's delayed a bit. I may have college loans I got to pay for. What in your mind should they be doing right now to best prepare themselves for a career?
Well, we get this question all the time, and it's one of the most common questions at SBC is how do you, transition from college into this career in the NBA? And we are in a unique time right now because of COVID-19 and this pause. And Jeff did a really good job of explaining how you can differentiate and use this time to your advantage. But we're also in a different era with social media, one where Beau, yourself, Albert, myself, we didn't grow up with this era. And so we think about it from a player's perspective all the time. They can control their brand. They can communicate their voice across, the industry. And now it's actually changed the way teams have to deal with PR and how it changes teams deal with medical. But it's also a great opportunity for every young person out there. If they're able to navigate the social media landscape well enough, they can communicate to the entire NBA basketball community, the entire front office community. And the best example of this is Jeff Siegel sitting with us now. This is how I met Jeff Siegel by following Twitter. And so literally on Twitter, it's retweets or connection. I don't even know how it all works, but I do know I just kept seeing this guy's name. And so I click on his website. I go to his website. I study his website, and I'm like, he's got an email address. And so I email him on his email address. And so I'm like, can I talk to you? You might want to talk to me. I had a cool job one time. And he's like, yeah, sure. I know exactly who you are. And so pretty soon we're on the phone. And then Jeff and I spend time because he's communicating, he's building content, sharing it through social media channels, which then attracts people in the industry back to his work. And then you get to know Jeff and you realize his stuff is as good as what most teams are producing and using internally. And so then I call Albert and I'm like, Albert, do you remember this guy who did SBC? He's like killing it. And all of a sudden we're here today. And look, I'm not blowing smoke. This is exactly how it happened. And so if we want to know how to take advantage of this current time, it's really this global time. Use social media to your advantage, spend the time, educate yourself, and then communicate to the basketball community through social how you can help. Because at the end of the day, Albert knows this, Beau knows this, Jeff is doing this. The way you get a job is you show people the value that you have to the people you're working for. Because all of us are looking for help. All of us are looking for people to help us. And that's exactly what Jeff Siegel has done. And that's why he's going to work in a front office, because he has shown and proven that he has value to somebody sitting in that chair.
Congratulations, Jeff.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Right now, so.
Yeah.
I think he just got hired, Jeff.
Yeah, speak it into existence. I'm very happy to just keep talking, and hopefully it'll happen.
But here's the thing. That is Wes nailed it perfectly, but that's what makes us so proud of SBC in this program. When we say fully immersive, you always hear, you get out of it what you put into it. Okay, guess what? This is the real deal, right? And creating and finding value, finding a niche, that's it. I used to say, hey, I'm a Swiss Army knife, whatever. Okay, that's my skill set. And I've, morphed into specialties in certain areas. But a guy like Jeff said, hey, I'm going 2 feet in, right? And we always say that every time at SBC when I'm talking to him. It's like, look, it's easy to straddle the fence, but go 2 feet in, right? And once you do that and don't look back, chances are, if you're good at what you're going to do and, you build the relationships, the connections, you'll find an opportunity to kick the door down. We've done that, and going back SBC, I have to give shout outs to Sergio Millis and Max Miller, our producer today. I mean, Serge is ahead of all of our digital content, and he created this whole platform for SBC to be more engaged, more involved. We're now doing the SBC Audio Experience podcast. Max Miller has created the Shooting to Score podcast. So like we're engaging these people and these the young up and comers that come through the program and trying to do whatever we can to assist them in their career. It's tough now, especially we've kind of gone through 3 phases. You take care of, make sure you're safe and sound through this. Then you kind of look at, okay, I need to kind of look at what's next, and now we need to prepare. Right. I mean, I've been using this whole hashtag this week of compete. Right. It's like right now we all are competitors. There's no doubt. We love competing. And this is the perfect time to kind of, I don't say reinvent, but reformulate, retool yourself a little bit, going, okay, when the green light hits, we need to go. And that's why SBC, I mean, we have between SBC and our VSL Talent database of interns who have served with us. I mean, we have over 160 people working in this business now who've come through our programs. That is the lifeline for all of us. I mean, we're learning from them, as Wes said. I'm learning from Jeff. I'm learning from other people in our programs. Just this year, I mean, I can think of, whether it be Shea Dawson at Overtime or Nikki Gross going to Vanderbilt University. I mean, there's all these different stories that we have, and go back to the Nick Urenz, who started with us as an intern, who's now in the front office with Golden State. I mean, those are the people that we bounce ideas off of. And that's how you develop this network. And as SBC, morphs and goes in, there's going to be new avenues and new opportunities in this business, whether it be in basketball or just sports in general. We will then educate ourselves, We'll huddle up with the people that we know who can teach it or who can, exercise a great curriculum, like Larry, like Beau, yourself. I mean, what you're doing with the jobs in sports and broadcasting and all of your, plethora of opportunities that you have with not only the NBA, but NBL, like those minds and those creative people we open up. And the goal is with SBC is to create more opportunities. I mean, I had a person last night call me and say, hey, who do you have as female coaches in your system? I may have a couple opportunities when this thing kicks. Right. So, I mean, we're getting those kinds of calls all the time. Wes and I we're mutual friends on the agency side. Right. And they're looking at, hey, what talent do you have? It's no different than recruiting. We have some great young talent at SBC. So to Jeff's point, like, look, using this time to fine tune your skills, come up with some new ideas and all that, be ready to roll. And because when we have these opportunities, someone gives us a call, VSL and SBC are going to provide a platform for you to get your foot in the door.
I think be ready to roll is important. I mean, I know that I was on the air on the afternoon that the league shut down at NBA TV. That morning, I got a format from a producer who said, let's talk about which teams are going to make the playoffs and which teams aren't. And by the end of the day, we're shutting down the league. So it was a fascinating, obviously different than any experience I've had in television in 25 years. But then you got to be ready to roll. I was doing NBL work later that week, and now I've jumped up and thrown on my real estate hat. And as soon as we close this show, I'm headed out to work on that. So whatever you can work on, you got to be working, you got to be hustling, and you got to be working smart. Albert, I'll give the last word to you. When the economy comes back and everything's really solid, what do you want to see from people that will get them hired in your eyes? What sets a person apart? What can they be doing right now?
I use the word iteration, right? I mean, again, keeping your stuff sharp, adapting to what the new circumstances are, whether it be the cap, be informed how that's going to affect you. Wes is a perfect example, like running a front office, pivots off of that, becomes an NBA insider. He's learned the media side of it. He's going to be ready, and he's in an excellent position to, jump back and lead a team. From our standpoint, everybody has tried to automate and become very digital. That's great. There's nothing like personal communication. There's nothing. We're missing that. All of us are missing. I want to give everybody here like just a bro hug. Hey, what's going on? But at the same time, you're missing that. I mean, quick story. My wife's a teacher. They did a little survey last night on distance learning. They just surveyed the 38 kids that were in there. 37 of them want to go back to school, right? Only one wants to just continue distance learning, right? Because at the end of the day, we all need that interpersonal communication. So again, sharpen your network. Make sure you reach out to people. People have time right now. As Jeff said, that you will get a response back more than likely, right? So be ready there. I would say, look, follow up, continue to, there's a lot of people out there in the unemployment line. And I feel for those folks. There's also people who are, hanging on. Do whatever you can to create that value, right? And if you have to pivot off what you're good at and learn something else, be amenable to it, right? Be able to jump in and say, hey, I want to learn that. I want to know how to do it. But keep your network sharp. Keep your personal skills sharp. Don't just sit back and, wait for the phone to ring. Like, engage with people. That's what you have to do, because no matter what, there's an effect on our bodies, on our minds, on our spirit. Everything is when you're around people and you feed off that energy. That's a good thing. Hopefully we can see this economy start to, slowly get back to it. I know out here in California, we're optimistic. I think we definitely dodged a bullet when all of this was going on. We had rain for like 3 weeks straight, so it kept everybody inside, and that may have been a good thing going forward. But you're seeing people do that, get that energy, bring that spirit. Don't stay down in the dumps. I mean, healthy too. This is another thing too. Like, everybody, you're seeing this. If nothing comes out of COVID, it's to show you, look, take better care of yourself, eat healthy, right? Get some exercise, keep that mind sharp, because obviously you're reducing the chance of catching it. And you're seeing that, 90+% are recovering on certain, without being an elderly or having a pre-existing medical condition. But that's the one thing my family's been doing. My dog is getting more walks than she ever has before in her life. So again, keep your family, your friends, your colleagues, keep everybody close, and expand that network during this time. And then when it pops, be ready to go. And if someone says, hey, I've had you going left the whole time, now you need to go right, you do it. Just like a player, working on their game in the off season, they try to develop a different skill every off season, going back to Olajuwon or Kobe or whomever it is. Now you've got these guys, hey, Harden's got the step back, whatever it is, you got to refine your skill set. And I would say it's the same thing in business. It's a new landscape out there, and it's going to be very treacherous in certain areas. The normalcy that we're used to is out the window. So, be ready to roll and have your best shoes on, because you're going to need some dancing feet.
All right, Jeff, Wes, Albert, thanks so much. And I'll just add on one piece of advice, and it's the first thing I'm going to do when we get back out there. Get a haircut when you get out of here, people. We all need haircuts right now. It's a desperate situation.
Bo, you look good. You look, hey, you're young and ready to roll.
Basically, I'm applying for a job in California, somewhere in the surf community, if I can get it. That's what I'm looking for, guys. Again, thanks so much, fellas. It's good to see your faces.
A reminder, if I could, too, just to shout out for SBC. We don't know when this thing will pop, but we are still taking registrations. That continues all the time. We will continue to update curriculums, engage people. For our SBC alumni, if you haven't engaged in VSL Talent, we have our own LinkedIn platform that we use and utilize. And like I said, we send a link to people. Keep an eye out. I can't release too much, but right before this hit, we had a real proud moment that Wes was a part of, that we've worked on a project with Warner Media and SAP on for some SBC alumni. So this network is ever expanding. I just remind everybody, stay engaged, do what you can. And if you haven't experienced it yet, don't be afraid to register. We'll get this thing cranking up again when we're all back to work.
That's right. And the hub for all of this, go to sportsbusinessclassroom.com. That's where you can keep up with all of this information. And also this show, this is the maiden voyage right here. The first show, our rookie experience guides, every Thursday. So you're going to want to check back in every Thursday for the SBC web show. My name's Beau Estes. For Albert, Wes, and Jeff, thanks so much, guys. And thanks so much, everybody, for watching.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the Sports Business Classroom Basketball Business Roundtable hosted by Beau Estes. You can find show notes for everything we discussed at sportsbusinessclassroom.com/Beau-Estes-web show. Please let us know what you thought about the format. And if you learned anything from this episode, please share it with your friends, your family, and anyone you think might be able to get something out of it. And if you really got a lot of value, please take a few minutes to review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. And as always, we want to hear from you. We do this show for you. So if you have any thoughts or comments, you can leave a comment on the site or send us your questions on social media by tagging us at Sports Business Classroom. Big thank you to our sponsor, Sports Business Classroom Online and HallPass Media, and thanks again for listening. Stay safe out there, guys. We'll see you here next week on the Sports Business Classroom Audio Experience.